Alright everybody, welcome back to another Ask a Dev Unreal Engine tutorial. My name's Kevin. We're going to be taking a look at an advanced leg today using control rig. Now, the reason we're going to be doing this is two big reasons. One, we'd love to give Team Anim a control that is often requested, a knee offset control, something that works whether we're in FK or IK. And then also, as a result of that, we're going to be able to give a much better solve for our FK IK snapping. This is a beast of a video. So we're actually going to be breaking it into three parts. We have the initialization, we're going to have the forward solve, and then we're going to have the FK snap part of it. My name's Kevin. Thanks for hopping in and watching this. As always, if you like what we're doing, we appreciate all forms of support. Help spread the word. There's super stickers and super thanks down below, and also the Patreon link is down in the comments down below. So let's get started. But before we hop into Unreal, I want to give you all a baseline of what it is we are going to be working on, so you can keep that in your head as a guiding light as we move forward. So let's hop in. All right, so here we are in Photoshop. What we have is we have a series of images that represent our current leg. The middle here, these are our bones. On each side, you'll notice I have two sets of controls. The bones there are grayed out because they're not actually bones. They represent what happens when our leg is in FK mode. It basically sits here and these controls drive it, and when we're in IK mode, our IK controls drive it. Now, what we are going to be doing today is we are going to be adding two more legs. We're going to be using those two legs to basically provide the means for this offset control. So what does that look like? So these represent our two new legs. What we're going to do is we are actually going to give and create bones for the FK hierarchy and bones for the IK hierarchy. What this is going to do is this is going to allow us to take our actual bones, our character ones that are driving our skinning, and align them to the FK bones or the IK bones. But we're not actually just going to align the bones, because that does not give us the offset mechanic that we need. So our IK is going to get aligned to our IK. Pretend that's aligned. Our FK is going to be driven from our FK controls, and then our central leg or main, whatever you want to call it, what it's going to do is when we're in IK mode, it is going to almost line up. What do I mean by almost? What we're going to do is we're going to use some aim constraints. And how that's going to work is what we're going to do is we're going to aim our upper leg. Let's see here. We're going to aim our upper leg not at the knee. We're going to aim our upper leg at this offset control. Okay, and then we're going to aim our lower leg from the offset control down to the ankle. And so what's going to happen is this offset is going to control where our leg ends up, and we're also going to be implementing stretching based on the position and the initial lengths and everything like that, so that the knee actually aligns properly. So that is what we are actually building. This should hopefully help give you some just an overview, guiding light to kind of keep this all in your head as we go forward. Let me show you what that actually looks like in Unreal now. Okay, here we are in Unreal Engine. Let's take a quick look at what it is we're going to be building, what our final leg is going to look like. It looks a lot like what we had previously. However, there are a few changes, as I mentioned. One of the big ones is we now have this offset control that is part of our leg setup. So you'll notice that as we bend our leg, everything looks the same except for this pyramid that's at the knee. If I pick my left knee offset for the IK mode and I translate it, you'll notice that I can move my knee. And as I move, I can move my knee wherever I want to. And the cool thing is the leg is going to stretch to maintain the contact, but it also maintains this pose whenever we translate our leg around. So it's a true offset. This is particularly powerful for allowing animators to handle the classic IK knee pop, as well as when you want to break the knees for extreme poses. There's all kinds of uses for it, but that's what it does. Now, if we switch over to FK, we have the exact same thing. Our FK has even though we're in FK mode now, you can see as we rotate our knee, you can see what we have is we have this same offset. Now, don't get confused because we do have a second, there's a lot that is visible here. This other leg is actually our IK leg that is doing the reverse solve, and we're going to get into all that. But this is what we're building. We have a lot to do let's get going with the init. Okay, so where is it that we're starting from with our init? Basically, we're starting from where we left off with our FKIK snapping and proceduralization of our previous FKIK legs. So we have up here, we have our current initialization step. We're going to create a new one. Now, I'm not going to create it from scratch. I'm going to duplicate this. So if we Control C, Control V over here, it is going to create a new init for me. And I'm going to call this the init advanced leg. And we have a bunch of work to do in here. So let's hop in. Now, as you can see, we have all of our heel ball ref, our foot, everything's in here. This is our pull vector. And we're just going to work in this empty space over here. Okay, so what we're going to start with is we're going to start with creating a variable that we're going to be using. This is going to be our FKIK suffix. The reason we need that is because we're working with both FK and IK structures, and I want to just create one for loop that does it all. So initially, when we come in, if you recall, if we get our bones, remember our bones includes all the way down to our foot, our ball. We don't need the ball. So I'm going to create another for loop here. I'm just going to do a normal for loop. This for loop we're going to go through 3 times. The reason we're going through this 3 times is because we're getting the thigh, the calf, and the foot. That's all we want. We don't want the ball or the toes or anything else that happens to be there. And what we're going to do with this for loop is we are going to get the item at the index. Now, what's important or weird to understand about this for loop in control rig is even though the count is 3, it does start at 0. If you put a print after it, you will see it actually starts at 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the element. Remember, the item that is in the first slot of the array when we start this off, based on what we passed in, is the thigh. What we want to do is we want to take that and we want to concatenate a string. Now, concatenate, if you don't remember, is just a fancy way of saying we're combining 2 strings. We're adding to the end of it in this case. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an underbar IK there. So this right here is going to be the name of our new joint. And basically all we're going to do is we're going to create, let's spawn a bone. And the bone we're going to spawn is going to be named this. So that's going to be our new spawn bone. Now we do need to do some trickery with the parenting, and we do need to, oh, actually I connected that into the wrong thing. This is going to be the name of the bone. We need the parent. Now, by default, probably what we could do is we could just, if you wanted to, just get the parent. Let's get the parent of this guy, our bone. All right, so let's get the parent here. And we're going to use that temporarily, and I'll show you the problem with this in a second. We're going to use that as the parent for our bone. All right, and let's just use our transform. Let's get the transform of this element. So let's get the transform of our bone. So we're getting the transform of the thigh at first, and then after the thigh, the calf, and the foot and the foot. We'll connect that into our transform, and then let's connect this all in and just see what it looks like. Now, before this is actually going to do anything, what we need to do is we need to, I'm going to be doing a lot of compiling and saving. I've noticed a lot of crashes in control rig, so just a heads up. But what we need to do is we need to actually call our init advanced leg. So let's go ahead and drag this up here. And then I'm just going to hijack these pins by control dragging, so I don't have to redo everything. We'll flip the axis. We're going to start with side L, and control colors for the left side are going to be 0 and blue and 0.12, 0.12. You can set these to whatever you want, it doesn't matter. I just want to be able to see those. Okay, so that initializes our left leg, and our right leg is going to stay the old way. So let's compile that. Now let's hop in here. All right, now what I'm curious to see is with this connected, we should be able to see in our rig hierarchy our new bones. So if we come up here, here is our left thigh. Here we go. You can see them coming in down here on the left. I'm going to make this a little smaller because the visual is not quite as important as the hierarchy right now. So we have our thigh left IK, calf, and foot IK. Perfect. But notice the problem. They're all parented to the wrong thing. The thigh is parented to the thigh, actually, let me rephrase that. the thigh is actually parented to the pelvis, which is what we want. But the calf is parented to the thigh, and so on. So what we really need to do for our parenting in this loop over here is, if it's the first one, we parent it to the leg or the thigh's parent, hopefully the pelvis, or generally the pelvis, but it could be something else. So we want to make this procedural so it understands it. And for the second one, we want to actually parent it to the IK one that we just made. So let's just do a little test for that. So if we are less than or equal to 0, if that's true, we are going to use the parent, this parent. So let's make an if, and we'll use, if it's true, we're going to use this parent. And if it's false, let's connect that in. If it's false, what we want to use is we want to use the previous IK that we just made. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the bones item at, but we're going to subtract 1. So our current index, so the first time through, remember, 0, thigh gets parented to the pelvis. Second time through, index is 1. What we need to do is subtract from that, and that will give us the thigh. Because right now, when we come through the second time, remember, the index is 1, so we're looking at the calf, but I need the thigh, so let's subtract 1, which is going to give me the thigh. And then from there, what I can do is from the bones, I can get the item that's at, and this is going to give me the thigh. And then what I'm going to do with that name is I'm going to do the same thing. I am going to concatenate. I'm going to concatenate or add the string under our IK. And that is going to be the name of the joint we want to use in that case. So here we go. Let's go down here, and we will plug this into our false. And we want to make sure that this is a bone so that that works properly, and that should cover that parenting. Now let's see if we can't find a more reasonable layout for this so that it's not quite so messy. All right, less than or equal to, that looks good. Great. Item at, subtract 1, item at, concatenate, get the parent, item at, concatenate, and that is going to be our name. Bones. All right, that's a little more reasonable, but we'll find a cleaner setup for this for the future. Maybe just a simple reroute node will help with that. Okay, so theoretically, with that, what we should see when we compile this is we should see our hierarchy has changed. You'll notice that we have thigh left IK, calf IK, and foot IK, all parented to each other correctly, and all set up to be parented to the pelvis. So that's working. And it's perfect. However, we want to make sure that these are actually in the right place. I'm going to do a couple things. I am going to turn on nulls because I want to be able to see those. And I want to display the axis on selection. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to be able to see what we're working on. So notice that our leg currently is off here in space. That is no bueno. So let's go ahead, this is set to local space, let's try global. Okay, there we go. So now we have our setup for our spawning of the bones, which is great. And if we pick each of these, you can see the axis is actually moving down the leg, which is great. I'm gonna do one more thing here though, because we're going to be doing a lot of debugging. So I'm going to temporarily create some little arrow controls just so we can visualize this super easy by spawning a control here. And the type, I'm not going to worry about the name. It's going to be named properly in the end. I'm going to make a transform, an empty transform here. And the parent is going to be the created bone. just so we can see this, I'm going to hide our character mesh. Okay, and then we need to, actually not the offset. I want this connected to the initial. All right, so now we have each of these as spheres. We don't want those spheres because it's great that we can see them, but they're not as helpful as an arrow. So let's take a look at an arrow. Arrow thick is fine, and colors I'm not going to worry about. Visible, compile. Nope, that was not what I wanted. I wanted a single arrow. Okay, and I do want to change the rotation of that. So let's remember, if we cast, we can use this, connect it to a rotation, and it will give us a value that we can change. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this, change this to, I believe we want 90 in C. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the cool thing is now these arrows will represent the orientation of our joints, and we can see them very quickly, which is awesome. That is simply a debugging tool. Do not get distracted by it, but you can see them showing up, and we will basically just disconnect these in the future. But they're super important as we're building out stuff because they help us visualize. All right, now we have our IK leg created successfully. Now we need an FK leg. I do not, actually, before we get to the FK leg, let's finish the IK leg. Remember what I said. The IK leg, both legs, we need an offset. So in order to create the offset, what we are going to do when we're done creating the joints is we are going to spawn a null. We're actually going to end up spawning 2 nulls. So if we get the bones and we get the item at 1, that's the calf. Okay, I'm going to take that name and I'm going to add to it. By the way, if you press the add button when you drag off of a name, it will automatically bring up concatenate. So don't get distracted by that. Okay, and I'm going to call this the knee offset ATT. Right, that is the attachment point. That is the 0 null that we can use to make sure that it's lined up to where we want it to be. So the name of this null is going to be knee offset ATT. Its parent is actually going to be the knee, or let me double check here. It's actually the parent is going to be the IK that we just made as part of this. So we need another concatenate, and this one is going to get the underbar IK. So this is calf left underbar IK. That is going to be our parent, and the parent, oh, actually I connected this to the wrong thing. We're going to connect that to the name of the null, and our parent is going to get connected to here, and it's not a null, it's a joint, it's a bone. All right, so if we compile that, you should see in our hierarchy, we have our offset ATT down here, which is great, but we need one more thing, and that is going to be our control. Also, we want to make sure that it's in the right place. This is why I turned on nulls. You can see that there is a null at the knee that is highlighted orange. I know it's probably difficult to see, but it is in the right place. Okay, so great thing about this is let's spawn a control. This control's parent is going to be the ATT node that we just spawned, and our initial value, let's just copy this empty transform. And what this is going to do is this is going to put a control right on that ATT, that null that we're using. Now, I'm going to go ahead and change some of the settings here. So let's go shape settings, and we are going to use, let's see here, color, name, let's use not a Dumaflachi, we're going to use a pyramid. Let's use a pyramid thick. Okay, this is all in the right place. It is not currently named properly. We need one more concatenate. Okay, I know there's a lot of concatenating going on, but if we concatenate one more time, this time this is just going to be our knee offset. Should we call it control? Sure, let's call it control. We'll call it the knee offset control. All right, and the name of that control is going to be here. Okay, so our control is now on the knee. That's great. We do need to do some work with some colors and our initial setup. So let's go ahead and do that. So if you recall, we passed in our colors as one of the arguments to this function. So the shape of, let's see here. I think we want to use a secondary color though for this. Let's get the secondary color. Get the secondary color. We'll plug that in to the color. And then for the transform, this one's going to be interesting because this is going to change left versus right. Remember, our left leg and our right leg, the real joints actually have different orientations. One faces up and one faces down. So let's go ahead and we'll do another one of these casts. Actually, I'm just going to steal this one. So this is going to be our rotation, and we're going to, if we connect this in. Oh, interesting. Okay, so if you see this happen, I've seen this happen a couple times, where all of a sudden, all of my controls disappear. The easiest way that I have found to get these back, this is not a bug, there's not a problem with your rig. This is just something that happens in Unreal. The easiest way to get this back from what I found so far is just to restart. So I'm gonna do a quick restart. Okay, so quick little restart and we have all of our controls back. You'll notice this is facing the wrong way for this particular knee. So we technically need to take this one and go -90. And compile that. And it flips around. Now we also do need to do a little bit of translation here. So let's go ahead and do that as well. So let's make a vector. We're going to make a vector and let's try 5 and Y maybe. Compile that. There we go. That looks pretty good. All right. Now, the reason we did all of that is because we know for the right leg, we have to do something different. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that flip flag that we have as part of our function call. And then we'll just do a simple if. So if we do an if on this, if it is true, we're going to have to figure this out, which one it is. If it's true, we'll feed this in. And if it's false, what we'll do is we are going to multiply this, scale it by -1. If you're not super comfortable with vectors, I have a whole video on vectors. You can check out, there's probably a link floating around here somewhere. But basically, in order to flip this, we could type it in as -5, or we can simply just scale this, which is the same thing as multiplying. So we're going to scale this by -1, which is going to flip this around. So if it's, let's see here, let's get this all nice and pretty. Okay, so that way, on the right side, it will flip around to face the other way. Now we're going to need to do the same thing. We're going to need to be doing this if again. So let's go if off of here for the rotations. And this is going to plug in, and that is going to plug in here. All right, let's duplicate this. And this one, we're going to go with a +90. Okay, compile and save. All right, so we are almost done with the IK initialization. Actually, we are done with the IK initialization. What we need to do now is we need to replicate this all this again for FK. But before we do that, let's just go ahead and plug in for our right leg and see how we did. So compile and save just in case. And then we're going to take this and we're going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to hijack this. I'm going to make sure that this is set to right. I'm going to uncheck flip. And we are going to connect this in and reset our colors. So our colors for the right leg should be red. So 1, 0, not pink, 1.12 for our secondary. Okay, now notice that our knee is actually correctly lined up. Our knee offset is correctly lined up once we do that. And you'll also notice that the arrows for the joints on the right leg are pointing the opposite direction. That's because those joints, those bones, were oriented differently. That's why we have the whole idea of this flip axis. Now, all we need to do is we need to redo all of this stuff for the FK chain. Now, in order to do that, we are not going to copy all of this. There's actually a bunch of things in here we could probably make functions out of. I want to do it separately and in the open like this so that you can hopefully more easily grok what it is that we're doing. Okay, so remember how I created that FKIK suffix? The reason I did that is because rather than redoing all of this, we're going to use a quick little for loop to do it for us. So even though we're not going to make a function out of this, we are going to reuse a little bit of blueprint scripting to help us out. So this FKIK suffix, what I want to do is I want to set it. And what I want to set it to is let's make an array. And this is going to be an array of names. The easiest way to do that, I'm just going to plug in one name here, disconnect it. All right, so the first one is going to be the IK. And actually underbar IK. Let's go underbar IK. And I know I say underbar, I know it's an underscore. I used to work with an engineer that always said underbar and I never shook it. So what I mean is underscore, but I'm still gonna say underbar. There's just nothing I can do about it. All right, so what we have is we have our IK and our FK. For each of these, what we wanna do is we want to set our suffix to that thing. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come through all of this for loop. Now, before we do that, we need to take our suffix and plug it into everywhere that we typed in the underbar IK. So let's get our suffix and plug that in here. Okay, let's keep an eye out. Here's another one. We're going to plug this in here. Nothing there. Down here. Underbar IK. Do we have any more? Oh, actually, this is going to need, this can't just be knee offset. It needs to be IK knee offset and FK knee offset. So we need to do a double concatenate on these names. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me double check. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to take this and we're going to, let's duplicate this. We are going to take the name, we're going to concatenate the suffix, then we're going to concatenate that with the knee offset, and we're going to have to do the same thing. Oh my goodness, that looks just so messy, y'all. Okay, we're going to have to do the same thing down here. So let's duplicate this. This is going to get the name concatenated with the IK or the FK and then onto the final before it goes in. All right, so what is happening here? Basically, we're setting our suffix. The first time through, it's going to name everything the IK, and the second time through, it's going to name everything the FK, theoretically. So let's go ahead and plug this into our for each loop, plug that into our setting of our suffix, and then we'll go ahead and execute the loop. So the first time through, the suffix is underbar IK, the second time through, it's underbar FK. And then it creates our hierarchy, creates our offsets, and we are hopefully good to go. So let's see how we did. So copy save, let's take a look at our rig hierarchy down here for our legs. So we have our thigh, these are all named correctly. This is IK. You'll notice that our knee is now called calf left IK knee offset control. So we got that correct. And look, we now have our FK. Now our FK also has all of the same exact controls. So we're reusing all of this, even though we didn't make a function out of it. We're reusing all of this just by popping in a little for loop here. And we have successfully created all of the initialization that we need in order to set up our advanced leg. So that's it. All right, everybody, you made it. We made it through the initialization steps for our advanced leg. We now have an FK chain and an IK chain set up and ready to go for our forward solve video. Speaking of, if I haven't put you to sleep and you're excited to get going and keep going, there should be a card around here somewhere where you can just click on it and get going and cranking on the forward solve video. For everybody else, as always, all feedback and comments are welcome. Throw them down in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of this new format where we're basically taking some of our more beastly videos and breaking it up into smaller chunks for you all to be able to process, hopefully a little bit easier. As always, huge shout out to the community and Patreon. Thanks for being part of thanks for supporting the channel and the community for being like the best part of doing this whole thing. I learned so much from y'all's questions. I appreciate your help, your feedback, and guidance as we go through this adventure. My name's Kevin. I'll see you in the next video.